What is going on, everyone? This is the Go Long Podcast, and we are on the road venturing throughout the greater Western New York area. We're in Kenmore. We've never been to Kenmore Fatty Beer Company. This is a very quality establishment. I'm glad we ventured north, Jim. How about you?
I guess I've never really been to Kenmore. I just considered it Buffalo. Like, I didn't know.
Well, we're Southtown guys. We frown. No, I think Northtown people frown on Southtowners.
Okay.
And then we feel this anger toward Northtowners for how they feel about us.
I like being up all the way up north, wherever we are right now. I like it. I like the vibe in here tonight.
Yes, it's some great people, great beers. I'm working a little Minky Doodle sour because it's getting warmer around here. So raspberry sour ale.
Yeah, we had a nice tease of a day today.
Well, when you have a guest like this, Jim, you better have a couple pops in you because you know that this guest is going to bring the heat. And we've got a lot of Western New York listeners, a lot of Buffalonians, and I think that they miss him dearly because when he was here, he was number one in your program, he was number one in your hearts, but in all seriousness, Mike Rodak, our special guest here, coming to you live from Alabama, AL.com, beat writer, all things Alabama sports. He covered you and Doug. He was another beat writer there on the Bills when I was on the beat. And he did it as well as anybody. He is old school. He's got a rough edge to him, Jim, that frankly is lacking across the country. If I can say so, I think there's, I'm going to sound like an old man now, Mike, but we're both fathers of two and mid-30s. You still have hair. I've been bald since I was 18, pretty much. But you look around and there's a lot of pandering, a lot of ass kissing, a lot of just. Everybody just trying to cover teams through a very, rose. How do I want to put it? Just rose-colored glasses. Yes.
Don't ruffle feathers, all that.
This isn't. I'm not even talking about Buffalo. I'm talking about the whole country.
In general,
there's good people in every beat. But Mike just had a hardness to him that I believe is lacking generally. So we have to bring him on because we've got to talk Bryce Young. We've got to talk NFL draft. And we'll definitely sprinkle in a little Buffalo Bills action. But, Mike, I don't know if that really was the introduction you were looking for. I probably could have gone a lot of different directions because you're also, one of my best friends in the biz, and we could share stories for a Rated R podcast one of these days for some of our running around Buffalo back in the day.
Sure, our wives would love that. I'm jealous you guys were out drinking on a Monday night. I used to do that when I had kids, and here I am in the office, 13 Central Time, talking to you guys. So I'm happy about that.
So what's it like at the Rodak household on a Monday night? Like, you don't get too personal here, but you got two kids. We all go through the process. Is it you got to cut off the bluey at a certain time, right? I mean, there's maybe you go for a nice walk. It's nice down there.
So the biggest thing lately for us has been Frozen. My 4-year-old son suddenly discovered Frozen like 2 weeks ago. This movie came out, 10 years ago? But he probably watched it 15 times in the last week. So every single morning, and he got up at 5 a.m. today. So I can turn on Frozen at 5 a.m. Frozen 2 after school, Frozen before dinner, Frozen after dinner, Frozen after bath, and I'm sure tomorrow morning Frozen again. So it's not Bluey, but it's Frozen, Popsicle. It's a lot of that stuff.
Next thing you know, your brain is going to be frozen with all that Frozen. That's a lot. That's probably a little. That's extreme. We blast through, Encanto and Moana and the Bluey apps, but that's quite a bit of Frozen. Are you in that boat at all?
No, the movie mode I haven't hit too hard yet. Bluey's good. Monster Trucks. He's 3 right now, so he's into the monster trucks. Yeah, little Bluey. I force a little college basketball and whatever the bet of the day may be. Maybe horse racing. It may be. You never know, Mike. You never know.
Well, that's the key. I mean, I took Ella to a Sabre game, and now she wants to watch hockey. She says, Dad, I want to get some hockey on the TV.
Key word being watch,
yes,
not bet.
Yeah. No, she's not. She doesn't have a sports book app pulled up on the phone quite yet. So we'll.
Daycare, though, she can start taking bets in daycare.
Here's a good question, though, a good dad question. Would you rather your kid get into sports gambling or TikTok first?
100% sports gambling. I hate TikTok.
I agree.
I just feel dirty having it on my phone. It's like,
oh, you have it on your phone?
Oh, yeah.
We might have to cut this short, Mike. That's pretty gross.
Chinese are watching those right now. Most people every word you say.
Is it one of those things? So is it? Maybe I'm really out of touch with it because I hate it. I think it's we're kind of making everybody just brainless zombies falling off a cliff, just a bunch of lemmings at this point with TikTok. It's awful. But for your job, like, do you need it for your job? Like, are players on there? Do you have to know what's going on in the world?
Some players are. Sometimes there's people, random players, that are saying stuff about players on TikTok. That's another thing that has come up around here. But mostly it's Instagram.
There wasn't anything happening with Alabama sports these last few months, really.
No. I don't know. Quiet couple months. Football season ended. Haven't had anything since.
Good God. Let's just get into it. What's this year been like for you, Mike? You cover Nick Saban, Alabama football, which is, king in the South. Forget the state of Alabama. Good luck to any NFL team trying to gain traction in the South because it's SEC country, it's Alabama country. So that is a monster unto itself. And then you think, okay, this season wraps up and, kind of just hit cruise control, maybe a couple miles per hour over the speed limit into basketball and be nice, easy season. And then you just cover the number one story in all of sports with Brandon Miller and everything that happened, which we talked about at the Combine. You shared detail with me that I had no clue went down in that case, but you've got to be at the forefront of that story. And you're raising 2 kids. How in the hell are you looking, so chipper right now with you got a nice glow to you, Mike. I'm not going to lie. You look good.
Much of the lighting, but it's like it used to be. You covered the NFL, and with the way the Bills were back then, most of January and February was kind of more nothing. You're going to Elmer's and watching hockey and eating wings and drinking beer. With covering college sports, college football season ends, and you're right into college basketball. In college basketball season, 2 games a week, every single week, from November until March. And this was the number 1 team in the country, Alabama was, for a decent little time. And there's a murder. One of the players is arrested indirectly. He's not the one who fired the shot, but he got kicked off the team, and then we found out later that the best player in the team was also there. Just a really tough story to cover, just because legally he didn't do anything wrong. Brandon Miller didn't do anything wrong, but obviously there's a lot of implications judgment-wise. The fans, viciously defending Alabama, viciously defending Brandon Miller, attacking the media, attacking opposing fans coming up to them. It was just intense. Really, just the last month up until they lost in the tournament. They got knocked out early, and we all went home, and everything's been a little bit quiet since. But people were kind of broken for a while, and it's been a lot.
Mike, this is probably obvious, but was that the reason they got bounced so early from that team? That basketball team was loaded, I thought.
Yeah, they were young. Miller was a freshman. They had 2 other freshmen starting.
So the freshman thing could, right.
Yeah, it kind of I think it rattled them a little bit. And Miller's stats last month. The other freshmen really dropped off. You could tell mentally it was affecting them. And they just got beat by San Diego State, which had all 4th and 5th year guys. And then San Diego State goes to the Final Four. And Metro always says veterans win in college basketball. He didn't really have a veteran here. So they were young. I think they were mature, but they kind of had to handle something that no other teams had to handle in quite some time. And they just they ran out of steam. You could just tell they were completely worn down. It was mentally worn down. The whole program was kind of feeling the pressure nationally, and they couldn't go any longer.
How do you like living down there? I think people up here are wondering. All right, Mike Rodak, he's in Buffalo, living it up, having a good time. Now he heads to Alabama. What's life like? Do you enjoy it? Is this home forever for you?
Definitely the foreseeable future. I'll never say never, as a good friend once said, but it's great. I mean, people kind of like view Alabama a certain way, and I think they have like a picture in their mind of like shoeless people walking around with straw hats and chewing on toothpicks and stuff like that. It's not what it is. Like, I think it's like any other, where I live near Birmingham, it's like any other suburb in America. It's really nice, in fact. Like, take Williamsville, take East Aurora, and combine them together, and it's kind of where I live, and it's great.
Taxes got to be a lot better. I mean, how?
Yeah, definitely better from that. And that's the other thing, too. People, like, not have a certain, like, political box they want to fit everything in, and you can't really fit Buffalo in a box. You can't fit Alabama in a box as much as like, people want to. There's a lot of diversity and just people you meet and what their thoughts are. So it's fine. Like, it's not. I don't think it fits a stereotype. I don't think Buffalo fits a stereotype either.
No.
People outside of Buffalo obviously have all sorts of thoughts about that, and people inside Buffalo get really mad and defensive about that. And it's kind of the same way down here. Like, people get defensive about how people view Alabama
I mean, rightfully so too. Right, I get defensive about that stuff.
Yeah, so I love it, and it's not. I mean, again, you see pockets of it that you might like picture in your head, but reality, everyday life is not really like that.
Man,
I love Birmingham, Alabama.
Yeah, it's like
one of the most underrated, greatest food cities you will ever come across that people don't think about, but it is. That's how I judge every city, is just on food. So Birmingham, thumbs up.
Well, you know what?
I can tell you this as a scout. I tried to never stay in Tuscaloosa. I would always, obviously, Birmingham. That's a quick drive.
Yep. I made it today. My wife makes it every day. Like, we live in Birmingham. Like, I don't mind Tuscaloosa, but it's a college town. Like, if you want to be surrounded by 50,000 college students and that's your vibe, like, go for it. But I'm in my 30s now. Like, it's not what I'm feeling. Birmingham's great. Like, it's similar size to Buffalo. It's smaller than Charlotte or Atlanta or Nashville, but it's kind of got similar vibes in some ways because it's southern. But it's just an old industrial city that's kind of coming back, and people enjoy living here. I'm one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I remember going down there for a story on Bart Starr when I was at the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel and really enjoying it. You're right, underrated city. I liked it.
Yep.
Mobile. So we've been there for the Senior Bowl. That's kind of its own little world. I remember feeling a certain way about Mobile when I was, God, it might have been 2015. You and Doug were there. I just remember seeing like a stray dog in the parking lot outside the stadium. And I felt so bad for that dog. I'm like, it just, he had no home, no owner, just hanging out, good-looking dog. I kind of wanted to just take him in and treat him like a service animal and fly him on back to Buffalo. So
you drive around Alabama enough, you'll see it every single place you go.
Yeah.
There's dogs everywhere.
Is that a thing?
Oh, yeah.
In Alabama?
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
All right, well, I'm sure that our listeners, this is exactly what they popped on this podcast for.
To hear about Alabama?
Yes, it's all about Alabama talk. But we brought you on.
Let's do Alabama football.
I don't think this kind of hit me.
Number one attraction in Alabama.
I mean, it kind of hit me earlier today, Mike. I mean, you might be able to correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure if anybody has seen more of Bryce Young than you. Right? I mean, everybody with a mouth has an opinion on the quarterbacks in this draft. And a lot of it is based on, a 10-minute highlight clip that they saw on YouTube, and you're a draft expert, and, you frame things in 280 characters, and the next thing you know, you reel in the likes and the retweets, and people take your opinion seriously when they never should have in the first place. You've seen the good, you've seen the bad, you've seen him in the SEC, which is the farmer system for the NFL. I don't even know where to start this, but when you hear that Bryce Young is widely considered the best quarterback in the NFL draft, what crosses your mind as the person who has seen him more than anybody, or as much as anybody?
Well, I guess the first part of that is he widely considered the best quarterback? It does seem like there's a lot of people that would put C.J. Stroud above him. And especially
Maybe even an Anthony Richardson at this point.
Yeah, and I've been on radio shows where they're asking me what's the difference between Anthony Richardson and Bryce Young. And I think Bryce's quality is that he's accomplished a lot more statistically, winning games wise than Richardson, especially C.J. Stroud as well. He didn't win a national championship as a starter, but they really should have 2 years ago. I think if Jameson Williams and John Mechie stayed healthy and they both blew out their knees at the end of the year, they probably would have beaten Georgia 2 years ago, and they were up on Georgia. And then last year, they weren't going to win a national title, but that was still a really good team, and Bryce was not the reason why they were held back. So he's accomplished a lot, and I think that's sometimes people forget about that because they, it's all about traits and numbers and all that. But Bryce, as a player, has done a lot. He set the single game record at Alabama for passing yards. He's kind of torn up the record book, which is already torn up by Tua. So he might be the best of that bunch when all is said and done. When you look at Tua, Mac, and Jalen Hurts, and, you can go back to Alabama quarterbacks before that. He has a chance to be the best. And he's a guy who everybody's going to talk about the height, and I'm sure we'll get into that. And with varying opinions, I do think it matters to some extent. I don't think it's like the end-all, be-all trade about him, but he's done a lot at Alabama, and I think people really like him down here. And Nick Saban's is probably at the top of that list too.
Really? Because I'd love to get him in an honest moment. If you were to look at Mac Jones, Tua Tagovailoa, Jalen Hurts, and then Bryce Young, like if Nick Saban were to honestly rank these quarterbacks, do you think he'd put Bryce Young number one?
Yeah, I do. I think talent-wise, it's definitely there with Bryce. With the physical mobility, I think is kind of where it starts for him because he's the same size as Kyler Murray. Where he's 5'10", 204. I think Kyler was 207 at the combine. They don't play alike at all. Like Kyler's going to run around the field. He's probably run 10 times a game, 15 times a game if you let him. Bryce never wanted to run. Like he even said it. He did make an NIL podcast at one point where he said like he had this stereotype about me because he's African American that he's fast, but people think he should be a running quarterback. And like subconsciously or even consciously, he's thinking to himself, I'm not going to be that guy. I want to be the passing first quarterback. And so there's actually times at Alabama when there's obvious clear running lanes. You do like athletically, he was able to do it, and he wouldn't do it. He was continue to hold the ball. And he's actually a pass. But athletically, it's all there. Like he's fast, he's quick. Really make guys miss. I know a lot of defensive players kind of got frustrated because they didn't really take him down. Not because he's a big guy, but because he's so shifty. And then just like the mental aspect too, I think. And Mac's a smart quarterback. Tua's a smart quarterback. I didn't cover Jalen, but obviously he played well for himself in the NFL. I think Bryce is held in really high regard in terms of just his ability to look at the field. I think Dan Jeremiah even dropped it too recently, where he had the best S2, the cognitive test score of these quarterbacks in this draft. So I guess there's some he's got it up here and he's got it with his legs too, and that's in his own. So, kind of the whole package where I think there's different pieces of that between Mac and Tua and Jalen, but maybe not all of it together.
So what would concern you if you were drafting? What would concern you?
Yeah, I think it's going to be how does the size – Alabama got around it a lot with, their offensive line being an SEC offensive line, top third of the SEC at that. So the blocking was there for him. It's not always going to be in the NFL. But Bryce was able to kind of move, and there wasn't too many plays where he was just dropping back, sitting in the pocket. the line forms a nice little pocket around him. He was always kind of moving around. He's in the gun all the time. So he was able to kind of find those lanes. But that's all going to tighten up in the NFL. And I don't know how much there's going to be more times when he's just sitting back in the pocket and he has to look over 6'6" guys, 6'7" guys, and there's not going to be an opportunity to kind of weave his way between them and so that is what concerns me. And there was a play that kind of slipped in my head, the Ole Miss game last year, where it was sort of one of those situations where it's a clean pocket, he's kind of sitting back, there's no pressure in his face, throws the pass, and it just gets batted down. Because, there's 6'7", 6'8" defensive lineman in front of you with his hand up. It's a controlled environment. Even if your blocking's good, your play call's good, and everything's working, he's just sitting back. Can you make that mistake work in the NFL? Because he's really good at the improv stuff. He's outside the pocket, things are moving around. But that's not going to happen all the time. So that would concern me. From a durability standpoint, does size matter? Does being smaller make you more injury prone? I don't know empirically if that's there, but he did have an injury this past year that was more his fault. When he was falling out of bounds, he threw on his shoulder, and it was like an AC joint sprain, but it wasn't anybody falling on him. It wasn't a sack. And he's been sacked. He's been hit pretty hard. There's been some pretty – just sitting in the press box, people kind of go, ooh, he's gotten smacked. And he's gotten right up. And there hasn't really been that injury that's happened from him getting hit, by a pass. Again, that could happen in the NFL. And it could be that because he's smaller, he's more prone to that sort of thing.
I kind of like this point. I just pulled up so Bob McGinn had his initial top 55 at GoAlongTD.com. They'll start a series next week. I was blown away by how much the NFL scouts love Bryce Young because these scouts that Bob talks to they can be hyper skeptical, hyper critical to the point where it offends people in what's become such a soft society. Just look at some of the reaction to the Jalen Carter breakdown today. But they love Bryce Young. And on the injuries, one scout said he's just little, so if you take him, you've got to live with it. Everybody's pretty much hurt nowadays, no matter what your size is. Josh Allen gets hurt, and he's a giant. He has the anticipation, the vision, the arm is live. And a different scout said, this is when Chicago saw the first pick, they should take him. Even with Justin Fields, it's a no-brainer to him. You take Bryce Young. And I get the point where it's okay, if he is Russell Wilson, Russell Wilson played at that size his whole life, so he knows how to kind of maneuver to create his own passing windows and play make his way. And the NFL game has changed so much. We almost have to take the rules that we've lived by for years and years and years, even up to the last couple of years ago, and throw them out because if you're in the right system and you've got the right quarterback, and he's got ability, and he's proven it. I've got no reason to think he can't do it in the NFL, right? Why can't he make those plays in the NFL? In the SEC speed, it's not the NFL speed, but it's as close as you're going to get. So, I don't know. I'm not saying I'd take him first overall, but what they say a lot is put on the Texas tape. So you covered that game when he threw the team on his back. Are people right to kind of point to that game and say, all right, that's why you take Bryce Young first overall?
Yeah, well, I actually wasn't at that one. I was on paternity leave for the first.
Oh, all right.
7 games of the season, first 8 weeks. So.
You were changing diapers.
I was, but I was watching the game.
PPTPs.
I can still speak on it, but that was, I think, because there's always been that knock against Alabama quarterbacks that historically, they go to the NFL and they're not good because of the system that they were running. I think that was probably more true 10, 15 years ago when you're talking Greg McElroy and A.J. McLaren and John Parker Wilson and those guys who essentially they were just handing the ball off to Mark Ingram or Trent Richardson or Derrick Henry. or they're throwing the ball to Julio, or throwing the ball to Amari Cooper. Like, life was very simple for those quarterbacks. And Alabama really changed the system 6-7 years ago, where they went up tempo, they went spread, they went pass heavy. Lane Kiffin kind of came in and started changing a lot of that. And then you had the Jalen, Tua, Mac, Bryce, and those quarterbacks do a whole lot more than what those old quarterbacks did. But people still knocked those guys because they were throwing to Devontae Smith. People said Mac Jones wasn't good because he was throwing to Devontae Smith. Tua was throwing to Waddle and Ruggs and Judy, and everybody kind of discounted the Alabama quarterback. Well, this past season, that wasn't around Bryce Young. We had Jahmyr Gibbs, who was probably the best offensive skill player. He was kind of like the safety guy. We couldn't really push the ball down the field by throwing your running back. The wide receivers were just not there this year for Alabama. It's probably the worst wide receiver group they had in at least 5 or 6 years. And so Bryce had to carry the team on his back just by kind of making plays himself and trying to find a tight end, trying to find a running back, trying to push the ball down the field that way. And that's what he did in the Texas game. He lost the Tennessee game, but he still actually had a pretty good comeback in that game.
Yeah, I remember watching that game. He was incredible.
In a really tough circumstance, too. There's 102,000 people, Tennessee fans, were trying to beat Alabama for the first time in 17 years. And, that's a really hard environment to kind of bring your team back in, especially if you don't have the guys around you that you once did. And that was, I think, what really impressed Nick Saban. And even the LSU game that they lost, he brought him back in that game, too. So he has kind of like this coolness to him, just where he's not phased by those situations. I don't think Mac had that. Like, you can rattle Mac a little bit. Tua to some extent had it, but Bryce definitely has kind of that. The situation is against you, but I think somebody even said he was smiling in the huddle when they were down in the Iron Bowl and they're losing in Jordan-Hare Stadium in Auburn, and they have to go 5 yards for the touchdown. He's kind of smiling to guys around him, and
that matters. You don't want to have that helter-skelter twitch to your psyche in those moments. A lot of quarterbacks do. Some of the best quarterbacks do. That's why they have the records that they have on Monday Night Football and don't win in the playoffs. So he was just laughing, smiling, loving life.
Yeah, but he's not a loose personality either. He's honestly a really boring guy. And I mean that in a good way. Like, I think NFL teams, from if they're doing the character checks on him, or from just a mental makeup standpoint, there's really nothing off the field I think would worry any team about him. Just a really boring guy that just loves basketball. Actually, he loves football. He's always just kind of grown up around those two sports. But there's definitely guys on this Alabama team where I would worry about them off the field. There was just a guy who was arrested for driving 140 miles an hour with, a pound of weed in his car or something like that. That's not Bryce Young. Bryce is the kind of guy who's sitting at home at 9 o'clock on a Friday night and watching film. Literally, I do believe that with him. That's kind of the way his dad brought him up. Kind of made to be an NFL player from a sort of standpoint. So, again, I think it's always just kind of been with him that way. Even talking to us, too. Bryce is very, very boring with us. I think teams will love that. He's like a computer program sometimes when you're asking questions in a press conference, and he just kind of, he has an answer that he just kind of spit out, and he's good that way. He's very unflappable. You can't really get him to say anything. You can't really let him deviate off of kind of that focus that he has.
I didn't hear anything bad. I didn't hear one thing that would scare me away. I haven't studied him on film, but I didn't hear one thing. If size is the issue, like you said, you know what you're getting. So it's either you're okay with it or not.
I even kind of, I guess you really do have to look at these quarterbacks on such a case-by-case basis because, a couple of years ago doing one of our several Jordan Love stories, part of the reason I kind of started to fall in love with Love's game is at Utah State. that last year there was just total chaos everywhere. I mean, he was missing starters on his line, and all of his weapons were graduated or injured. It was just not good. I mean, so he had to play make and create and improvise, and like that's the NFL. You better be able to make those plays. And you look at the quarterback in the same draft class in Tua Tagovailoa, where he's taking that 5-step drop. He's able to kind of pat the ball, look down the field, and oh, hello, there's Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, beating a corner by 7 yards, and anybody, we can make that throw. So
it's tough.
But I think that Tua's proven that he does have that superpower of anticipation. He can see things. He does have a rare trait. It just took 3 years for all of us to see it with the right coach and the right weapons, where he's going to hit a guy as he makes his cut. So I don't know. I guess I'm not going to have a strong opinion one way or another. We just have to look at these guys in their own game, in their own situation, and really get to know them on an individual basis. What about like just the case? So you're in the SEC, so you've seen Anthony Richardson. I'm going, gosh, I was so seeing what these scouts said about Bryce Young and watching him probably more than any college player just as a casual fan. It seems like a no-brainer, right? Like this is who you take if you're the Carolina Panthers and you traded up and you gave them all this ammo, you gave up so much for that first overall pick. You better get it right. That's the safe pick. That's the no-brainer.
Oh yeah.
But then, holy hell, you see the kind of things that Anthony Richardson could do at his size, with his speed. And I know we can't look into the combine too much and pro days too much. But isn't that kind of? I mean, I guess the counter argument is if you're going to give up that much to get the first overall pick, shit, take the big swing. Like, go all in. Like, what are you scared of? If you believe in your coaches and you believe in what you're building, and this is somebody that's can run away from everybody and throw it out of the stadium and do everything you could ever want of a quarterback, isn't that Mahomes, Josh Allen, just the rare talent that you're looking for at quarterback? Why be afraid? Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mahomes probably showed more of an intelligence than either of those guys. I think if you're drafting Richardson, you're drafting him to be the next Josh Allen. But there's a lot of examples of guys who were drafted that way and didn't turn into Josh Allen. And the odds are probably against that happening. And I think if it truly was there for Richardson, you probably would have seen a little bit more of it by now, given the time that he had at Florida. And if he goes to Carolina, it's not like you're putting him into an ideal circumstance either. Like, you got to sort of show it right away.
DJ Moore now.
Yeah, within the first year and a half to 2 years, that's kind of your window. Otherwise, the way the NFL goes, things are just going to churn right along, and you're drafting somebody else. So it's not like you have this really long runway to get into Richardson, take that piece of clay and mold them into this masterpiece. Like, it's still got to happen within a reasonable amount of time. I didn't watch a ton of him, like SEC East games. I can't say I caught a ton of. The one game they played against Alabama, Richardson actually got hurt the week before because he was running 75 yards for a touchdown and pulled his hammy, and then had to miss the game against Alabama. And Emory Jones started, and he was not great. Much more limited guy. So, I haven't seen a ton of Richardson. I know the stats aren't totally there. I think Mike Florio had the stat, his completion percentage. He had some study that he cited that completion percentage and games started are the two most tightly correlated things from a college quarterback to NFL success.
That's a new one. I gotta see this one.
Yeah, I remember reading that maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, and he basically said Richardson doesn't really check either of those boxes. But granted, Josh Allen didn't either, and that's kind of the but sort of case now is Josh, and that worked out. And you have the height and the size and speed. There's people out there that think that they can turn you into what they want you to be. Kind of like a girlfriend. You got the right measurables and kind of it's but sometimes there's just certain things you just can't change about people. So if it's not there, then it's
Right.
not.
What are you really rationalizing? What needs? What can't be corrected there?
Right. It's like, well, there's only so far you can go, and I'm not. Like, again, I don't have firsthand knowledge on what Richardson's good at or any of that. I'm just saying, like, in terms of how they performed in college and what they've done against SEC defenses, clearly the results are better for Bryce. But as you guys know, like, it's not always about production; it's about coach. And there are traits about Richardson that are clearly superior to Bryce, mainly the size, but there's also a lot of traits about Bryce that I think are superior to a lot of people. And you watch him play, and he's got an agility and a shiftiness to him that's, I think, really in common with his position. And his vision, just kind of the combination of his arm and his eyes. It's like a point guard in basketball. That's what a lot of people have compared him to. I remember covering the SEC championship game, and that's what Coach said. It's like he's a point guard, and he sees the court, and he doesn't have to necessarily even look at guys. He just, the arm and the eyes are connected, and he can get the ball to where it needs to be. Because even in that SEC championship game 2 years ago against Georgia, Bryce is running down the field, doesn't even look at Brian Robinson as running back, who's probably 4 o'clock to his right, and just pitches the ball over to him when he's about to get hit. Robinson catches it and runs for the first. It's kind of that sixth sense, John Stockton type of deal where he grew up playing basketball, and I think he kind of has that in his DNA.
Man, that's great stuff, Mike. I mean, here's what a scout told Bob on Anthony Richardson. Quote, he's a raw athlete. He's got a little Vince Young in him. I'm sure he's a better kid and smarter. He's a freak athlete, but he's a long way as an NFL passer. I mean, a long way. You're rolling some big dice if you take him in the first round, or you have a lot of rocks in your head. They were not kind, the scouts. This was early in the process. So I would think maybe there's even, and I'd like to ask you this, Jim. So if scouts feel a certain way about Anthony Richardson, and so a totally different scout said this. Florida had a bad season, and this guy was the reason they had a bad season. He was so inconsistent, but at the combine, he'll have the strongest arm there, and people will get all excited about him. He'll be a workout wonder. That's exactly what happened. He blew it up, and guilty as charged, I'm starting to kind of fall for this guy. I think that at 6'4", 244, my God, if you can run the way he runs, if you've got his arm strength, he has a feel for the game. And kind of jumping ahead of the point I want to get to Mike about as well, but I feel like accuracy for the longest time, we thought you either had it or you didn't have it, right? And like you get to the NFL, and if you're accurate, you're good to go. If you're not, good luck. But Josh Allen being the preeminent example, you can become more accurate. This is how we met. This is how we launched. Go along with the series on Josh Allen. Like the pressure's on him. Is he going to become more accurate? Is he going to take advantage of this opportunity when his owner loved Patrick Mahomes? And he has proven to us all that you can improve that element of your game. And now all of these quarterbacks have their own gurus, their own private coaches. They're spending 6 months in the offseason correcting exactly what they kind of look at the NBA where for the longest time, if you were a good three-point shooter, you were a good three-point shooter. If you were a bad three-point shooter, you're not even thinking about it. Where now it's if you work on it in the offseason, you can become a good shooter. LeBron couldn't shoot for shit early in his career. He worked on it, and now he's still playing. That could be accuracy in the NFL. So I feel like he can work on that. What you can't coach is highlights that we see of Anthony Richardson when he just has a feel for where the rush is. He gets away from it. He shrugs you off. He's got physical gifts that you can't just inject into a Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud for that matter. And there's going to be a team out there that maybe it's the Carolina Panthers that says, give me that, and he'll become more accurate, and we are going to have this absolute beast of a quarterback that you need if you're interested in winning Super Bowls, right? Because maybe that's what you need to win a Super Bowl. You need the freak. You need somebody who can rise above all of the B-plus quarterbacks. Frank Reich strikes me as a coach who wants to swing big. Scott Fitterer just went through their veteran carousel. Dan Morgan's there. He was the assistant GM with the Bills when they drafted Josh Allen. I feel like there's enough kind of signs there that point toward Carolina warming up to Anthony Richardson, number 1 overall.
Without watching him, I don't feel comfortable talking about him as a player. Because to me, you study every player based on what are they asking him to do and what throws is that quarterback completing that other guys can't complete. And I have to see that before I would even want to talk about Richardson. Because to your point, the strong arm, the combine numbers, that was known when he was in high school. So he's the same. Like you already knew that. So there's nobody surprised
I'm not
by.
going to diminish that though.
But it's not anything that you take note of as a scout. Like that doesn't. I can't believe Richardson. Well, I can't believe Richardson blew it out at the combine. Yeah, you can. He put up those numbers in high school as an athlete. You knew he was going to blow out the combine. I need to know what kind of throws he can make under pressure. And what was asked of him, what were the throws that they were asking him to make? Until then, honestly, his resume says no.
I'm saying that in 2-3 years, maybe he has the best potential to progress into a top 5 quarterback.
That could be. That's just too.
It's a big gamble. It's a huge gamble.
Yeah.
But would you take it if you're running the show?
No.
Like if you're in that seat, you got the number 1 pick, you just traded everything that Carolina just did.
Only if I thought he could throw. Like Lamar Jackson can throw. Lamar Jackson can throw the football. Like he needs to obviously do it and get into the Super Bowl. But you got to be able to throw.
Okay.
So until I watch him and see that, or say he can or can't, the other stuff wouldn't matter to me.
Mike, the floor is yours.
I'm with Jim. Like I want to see it beyond the numbers. You know, like the combine numbers is always like my eyes always kind of glossed over. Like when I was covering the league, like when I saw those, and probably even more so.
I can tell you
that's because you're at Kilroy's drinking beers with me, Mike.
Well, that's why my eyes.
Don't worry. We were glossing over those numbers too. Nobody in the NFL cares about a quarterback's combine numbers.
Right. It's like, why do we even do this? I guess it's for TV.
We don't know. We don't
right.
know. Yeah.
And there's certain people, like there's the draft people on Twitter, but it's like I want to see it. And in this case, like I said, I haven't really watched a ton of Richardson. College football is tough. Because there's too many damn teams, like 230 plus now FBS teams, and there's no Thursday night games, there's no Monday night games. Everything's kind of condensed on Saturday, except for the MAC or some Friday night games in the Pac-12. But it's like I wish I could see all these guys. I an Alabama game on Saturday. That's like the one thing I'm watching, and maybe I have time after to watch something later. But I just don't get to see a lot of these guys live. Like I can't say I've watched Will Levis. I can't say I've watched Anthony Richardson more than that kind of makes it tough from like the broader draft standpoint, or just talking about college football in general. But there are people out there who sit there with their 6-8 different TVs and watch all these games on Saturday. And they're at that level yet.
You're watching Frozen for the 1,700.
Yeah, if I'm at home, my TV's on Paw Patrol. It's not watching another football game. I can assure you of that. So, unfortunately, I can't speak too much beyond Alabama, but that's not a huge problem to me, I guess.
You know what, though? I mean, it is something to be said for your vantage point, though. I mean, you have seen Bryce Young to the point where, okay, this is somebody that can make the plays you have to make at the position. And I love your vantage point because you covered the Buffalo Bills. How many years were you here, Mike? 6, man. So, seeing the quarterbacks that you saw here, you drop Bryce Young into that equation. How does he perform? with this game.
With the fourth ranked 2014 defense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
how would he
Kyle
look
Orton
with,
is out and Bryce Young is in.
or how would he look with Shady and Robert Woods and Sammy Watkins and Marquise Goodwin and Clay? And
Right. Yeah, no, I think
don't you wish the timing was a little different here?
quarterbacks.
I think he's better than Tyrod. That's, I think, kind of a given. And that's not to say that Tyrod is bad, but I think he offers more from a passing standpoint and a finishing standpoint. Yeah, and Tyrod, I think, was more run first, and Bryce is definitely more pass first, and I think he would have made good use of those guys that he had around him. It's a tough comparison with Josh because you're just looking at two different ends of the spectrum in terms of size and kind of how they came to get to where they are. You know, Bryce was from Pasadena, California. Was a prospect, 5-star kid coming out, moved to USC, flipped over to Alabama. He's been in all these different Elite 11 and all that.
You know what, though, Mike?
Yeah.
They may look different and play different, but their expectations will be the same where they were drafted, right?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah, and they're both top 10 picks.
They're both top 10 picks. But can he be the face of the franchise?
Yeah, exactly. And that's where they get to. And Josh is going to run over people and stiff arm them, and it's going to throw these 80-yard bombs. And Bryce has an arm.
Hey, Mike. They're taking that element out of his game. You heard?
Oh, yeah, that's right. They can't do that anymore.
Right. That's priority number one this offseason. Not adding offensive linemen or maybe a weapon or two. It's Josh, reel it in.
They either got to prolong his career or just go balls to the wall in the time that they have left.
Go balls to the wall. I mean, God, look at all these quarterbacks the last 2 years. They got injured in the pocket. It's such a myth that you get injured when you're running around. Yeah. It is. I get it that the hits add up. Don't get me wrong. But if you think you're going to change him 6 years into this thing, if you want to neuter it and sanitize his game and make him somebody else, then okay, win the AFC East, and that's about as good as it gets. Right,
and we talk about it, a lot, but it's like there's a time frame for Josh because of the way he plays. And
exactly.
And
embrace it. Accept it and embrace it.
Right. There could be a day when he's 30, 31, 32 years old, he's just not the same guy. Whereas other quarterbacks might go to 35, 36, 37 before that happens to him. There could be a condensed window. And
that's why Baltimore.
Yeah.
Baltimore has the easiest decision. Like, you already know. Okay, yes, Lamar has a shelf life. Sure, they all do. What do you think? Like, yeah, you have another 5-6 years. Like, do it.
Right. I mean, the alternative is
it's nothing. It's
desperation. It's guessing and hoping and praying and tanking.
Same with Josh. I agree. This is your shot. Pay him. This is what you paid him for. Go get it.
Yeah.
You're already $250 million deep on him. We've already spent. I mean, they gave up a ton just to get Josh. I mean, in terms of the number one overall pick, essentially, is what it was worth. And then you go out, you spend basically 2 first-round picks to get Diggs, right? You trade one, whatever it was. I forget the whole deal. I don't work. But you're giving up a lot of picks just to get those guys there. So why not try to use it?
Oh yeah, the investment has been made.
Yeah.
The head coach will now be, like we talk about, he is being watched closely at this point.
Oh yeah.
You know what though? When you're, it's one thing for anybody to talk in March and April, and it's quite another when it's 3rd and 7 and a game is on the line and you need to make a play, whether it's week 1 or the playoffs. The ball is in his hands, literally. So it's probably much to do about nothing.
It is.
It's his team. I mean, he's the richest employee at One Bills Drive. He's in control. Like, he's in charge. for better or worse, I mean, he is. He'll be all right. So, all right, Mike.
If there's going to be an argument over whether Josh is going to run think Josh is going to win that before Sean does. I think that's Josh's one to decide.
Exactly. Yeah. You're not going to be able to just reel that in when push comes to shove. All right, Mike.
I miss it, though. I miss it, guys. Talking Bills, drinking beer. It's the good old days for me.
You're welcome anytime. I'm sure the fans would love to roll out the red carpet for you. Any day, any week.
I think I remember seeing Mike at Osteria maybe possibly at the bar at Osteria, maybe.
Yeah. Ooh, I stopped in there once or twice. I remember that. Good little spot.
You embrace the city. Like, we joke about the way fans treat you, but, like, you really were Buffalo. And you covered the team in such a professional, like, thorough way. And you loved the city. You liked it here. This could have been home long term.
Oh, yeah. I think that's
you never know where life will take you.
A big misconception, too, is like, Rodak hated Buffalo. I love Buffalo. Like, I didn't leave.
I know.
It wasn't as if, like, I want to leave Buffalo. No, it was my wife was from Alabama, so that's where we went. But it's the same thing, like, down here. Like, there's fans who will kind of get on you, and it's like, you hate Alabama, go back to Buffalo, like, go back north.
So you got to go back to Boston when you were here. Do you get to go back to Buffalo?
Oh, yeah. I got that. Like I said, this whole Brandon Miller thing is just like fans, media going at each other. When there's fans on Twitter, they're like, yeah, you Yankee, like, go back north. Or, and that's just like,
oh my God,
do it in multiple places now. It's like
you're like a man without a country. You're Edward Snowden. You're just kind of you need to seek asylum somewhere.
Right. Can't win apparently, but fans are going to be fans wherever they are. It's kind of the same mentality, and that's why
honestly, like, that is the best case scenario. Honestly, Jim, like, if you're covering a team and nobody's saying anything, like, that's when you should get worried. It's almost like you're playing in high school basketball and your coach, if he's like riding your ass, that's probably a good sign. If he's just ignoring you and not correcting mistakes, he doesn't give a shit about you. Like, you're a lost cause. So, Mike, the fact that you have this vibrant, active fan base means, like, you are unbelievably relevant, which not a lot of sports writers can say. Honestly. Really. I mean, if there's a lot of people who cover NFL teams, and people probably don't care that much. So what are you doing? Keep doing what you do. You do it great. We miss you. We got to get you back up here for some reason. Somebody's got to get married or do something big that coaxes you back up.
I'll have to find an excuse. It's on our list, like you said. Everybody's kind of gotten married now, so maybe we'll have to wait until second marriages or something and go back up for that. But we'll get there. I'll get there.
We can't go to the lodge anymore. I think it's shut down.
That's like changed over like 7 different times now, right? One of those.
What's that?
That's like changed over like 7 different times now, right? One of those triple S.
That was our go-to brunch spot.
Well, I'm just mad that the Bar Bill opened in Northtown right after I moved away from the Northtown. I would have loved to go there when I was there, but
I'm telling you, the power rankings have adjusted since you've been here. If we're talking chicken wings, it's 911 Tavern, but Elmo's is right up there too, and that's actually where we're going to redirect, potentially getting wings with one Tim Graham very soon.
Well,
so you'll have to be there in spirit with us.
I'm sure that he eagerly awaits your invitation there. So I wish I could join.
You know what? We'll FaceTime you in, and we'll pretend you're there. How about that?
Sounds good, my man.
Unless you have to watch Frozen again, which I don't know. Are they fast asleep? Are you good? In the clear?
They are fast asleep. We are in the clear, but it's been a pleasure speaking to both of you.
You're the man, Mike. Good to see you, brother. Let's make sure we keep in touch beyond the podcast too. Good to see you.
Will do.